Welcome to the Disrupting Obesity podcast. I'm Charlotte Skanes, and I'll be sharing ways to regain control over your body and lose an extreme amount of weight naturally. Being fat is about so much more than just the food. It's about your relationship with food. That means that dealing with your weight is about more than just the food, too. You have to change that relationship. You have to start disrupting obesity. This week, we're on episode 7 in my series of 9 lists of 9, and it's Ask Whatever number 23. 4 weeks ago, just like today, it was a regularly scheduled Ask Whatever, but I added a twist, and I made myself answer 9 questions that I've been avoiding. That's exactly what's happening today, too. You know about the spreadsheet. Well, I'm just going to keep working my way down it. I'm going to pick up where I left off. And it isn't that there's anything wrong with any of these questions. In a lot of cases, it's just a creative process thing. There's this massive list of questions. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. And when I sit down to write and ask whatever, I start at the top and I move down through the questions I haven't answered. And if the answer starts to come to me, I'll go write about it. So it can be a mood thing when I'm sitting down to write. But they're all good questions. There aren't any bad ones. Even the Gladyses give us a jumping off point for some of our more interesting conversations, right? And I don't mind repeat questions either. So just keep sending them in. I love your questions. You can send them in through the website, or you can reach out through my DMs on Instagram, whatever's easier. I promise you it's not annoying or boring at all. Now, our first question today, just like last time, is about protein. How important is the protein intake? So I've been avoiding this one because it's just like hanging an open season sign for the Gladyses. My answer upsets them because, well, this is protein's moment in the sun when it comes to weight loss. And I'm fine with that. Although if you heard or saw, because you can watch all these episodes on my YouTube channel, and I would be super grateful if you'd subscribe. I'm still refusing all offers from advertisers, so it would be great to help get my channel off the ground. But if you were watching or listening to the first episode in our series of 9 lists of 9, you'll know that as happy as I am for protein, I think fiber is the unsung hero of weight loss. It's just way less glamorous than protein, but it deserves a time to shine too. Anyway, how important your protein intake is depends on what you're trying to do. Your body needs protein regardless of what you're doing. But if you're trying to build muscle, for example, your protein intake becomes a lot more important. Protein is great because it helps you stay and feel full. It's also great because all of the critical body functions that need protein to happen. That's another good reason, right? But that's true of all the macros. Fat and carbs are just as important to your body as protein is. There's a lot, there's too much trending advice on protein. They want you to eat your weight in grams of protein each day. Make sure that you're drinking your protein. You have to have at least 40% of your daily protein with breakfast. Like it's all over the place. And you can pretty much ignore all of it. Like seriously, just in one ear and out the other. You don't need to figure out how to incorporate protein shakes into every other thing you need or that you eat. And you don't need to choke down the powdered stuff either. In some respects, I feel like there's been some bleed through from the bodybuilding crowd, which makes a lot of sense. Post-weight loss bodybuilding is very popular, and there are just whole online communities and social media groups dedicated to it, and it's pretty amazing. It's something that I really admire. But somehow we've hit the point where we're being told that we need to eat like professional bodybuilders to lose weight. And that's just not true. But you can see how pervasive the diet and exercise myth is, right? We've been conditioned to believe that because someone has built a lot of muscle, they know how to show us how to lose a lot of fat. That's not always the case. Sometimes, not always. I don't know much about bodybuilding, but I do know that they need to eat a lot of calories, like a lot. And I learned from Stanford that our bodies need protein to build muscle directly, which is why weightlifters are so into their protein count. But you don't need to be. I'm not saying that there aren't benefits to increasing your protein. There are, mostly because of how full protein makes you feel. It's very satisfying stuff. But you don't need to obsess over it. You just don't. But it is undeniably handy stuff to have in your system. There are 4 calories per gram of protein. It's the same as carbs, right? Fat is 9, but it takes more calories to digest protein. That's the whole thermic effect of food thing that I've talked about before. You can science the shit out of this, but do you want to? Because you don't have to. It's just completely unnecessary. Your body needs 0.8 grams of protein for every kilo you weigh. That's 0.36 grams per pound. Not 1 gram for every pound, or 1 gram for every pound of your goal weight. I'm sorry, that trend is just making me nuts. I can't even imagine trying to get to 137 grams of protein a day, let alone 338. That's almost 11 chicken breasts a day, right? It's 4.5 for me now. And don't do it, Gladys. Don't. I am fully aware that with proper protein management, I could do it. Got it. But I'm going to cut you off at the pass here. Okay. I am strictly forbidden from ever using protein powders or shakes or bars. All those processed high protein, everything is off the table for me. And as a bonus, I have to watch my oxalates, which means I have to limit my red meat and things like beans. Okay. Is your keyboard down yet? And before you go off about how I shouldn't be giving advice at all if my personal medical condition is so specific, I hear you. But here's the thing. I could write a series of like Gladys templates at this point so that they could just pick whichever one they wanted to complain about and just press a couple of buttons, just get it done for them. Because the attack here will be about me, not the weight loss part, because the science on this one is sound. When you're losing weight, it is not mandatory to eat massive amounts of protein. And the types of Gladyses who press send on this issue, they know that. The strangeness, or whatever you want to call it, of my particular medical situation doesn't negate the truth. Eat protein. There's no need to shy away from it. It's necessary for your body to function. You got to have it. But don't make yourself crazy chasing an unreasonable number. At 338 pounds, my body needed 122 grams of protein a day. At 200, I needed 72. At 137, I need 49. Depending on what app you're using, you won't need to do anything special to keep track of this either. A tracking app like MyFitnessPal will automatically do it for you. And believe me when I tell you that the internet is full of high protein, low calorie recipes. But whatever you do, you have got to pay attention to the calories. If it's a keto recipe and you see the words cheese or heavy cream, just keep scrolling. I'm going to divert off for just a second because I don't know if I've said this before, but it's come up a fair bit when I've done one-on-one stuff. I think there's a bit of a misconception that keto is a high protein diet. It is kind of, but it's a high fat diet at its core. And I'm not sure if everybody knows that. Some people hear keto and automatically associate it with weight loss. But even keto works on the whole calories in, calories out premise, right? I'm betting that most of you know someone who gained weight while eating keto. Fat has a lot of calories, right? It's the most of any macro by more than double. So yes, some keto recipes are good for non-keto weight loss, but you really need to watch the calories in them. The bottom line, though, is that you don't have to eat massive amounts of protein to lose weight. And overall protein management isn't something that you need to worry about. Something you do need to get a handle on, though, is our next one today, which is how did you manage to control the portions you eat? So I started small and told myself I could keep having more, right? And I did my whole JLOI thing. I told myself I could eat whatever I wanted, just less of it, and I cut back incrementally. If you caught the webinar, the one that I did a few weeks ago, you'll have watched me take you through what that looks like in real time with the new worksheets I created to help make that as straightforward as I could. If you missed it, you can catch the replay and get the sheets. They're still free. We'll put a link in the notes and you can head to the website. You don't want to make yourself feel deprived. You don't want to push yourself to the point where a binge feels like the only way out. It's a desperation mindset. And when you've got a lot of weight to lose, there's already enough of that going on. When you're desperate to lose weight, it starts to trickle over into other things. The food part's hard enough. I cut down on my portions gradually. I didn't have the expectation that I would go from eating the way that I had been to suddenly, being able to control it precisely. I tried that. Rigid portion control wasn't the answer. It didn't help me. Don't try to go from 2 sandwiches to a half of one. It's a bad idea. It's an unsustainable move. Try 1.5 first, or 1 3/4. I mean, honestly, if you leave the last 2 bites when you've always cleaned your plate, that's still progress. It's something. Maybe tomorrow you'll leave 3 bites. Small incremental changes are the way to go. I did things like using smaller bowls and plates and mugs. I used a smaller spoon. I'd put less on my plate to start, knowing that I could, get up and go get more if I wanted to. But I gave myself the space to turn into the version of myself that I wanted to be. I tried to make it easier to be that version of myself, right? The one that made better choices. I knew I could still make the wrong choice. But to do it, I'd have to get my ass up from the living room and go back into the kitchen, and I'd have to go do it there. Um, Managing your portions happens gradually. It starts with small changes. It starts with taking slightly less. And sometimes it means taking less, and sometimes it means cooking less, or freezing the second helping right away, like right away before you go eat the first helping. Just take that option away. Question 3 today is, what do you eat out when on the road? This one comes back to JLOI too. When I'm eating out on the road and I'm trying to lose weight, or now as I maintain my weight, I eat whatever I want, just less of it. You can lose weight eating nothing but bacon and bubble gum so long as you're in a deficit. But it can be tough, and you need to find balance, especially if you're on like a road trip or something extended, and it's not like you're just having the one meal and then you get to go back home to your controlled environment, right? You might have to map things out. And like with just about everything else, you can choose to see this as chains, or you can choose to see it as freedom. You know how many calories you have. I'm assuming that you know where you're going. So plan it out. Figure out where you'll be stopping. Google the menu. Plot your calories out for the day. And remember, too, that restaurants aren't your only option. Grocery stores have loads of ready to eat food and lots of opportunities to make better choices than a drive through. You can pack a cooler, stick to 0 calorie beverages, whatever you do. Do 2 restaurants and 1 grocery store each day. Have I mentioned plan ahead? Keep the food in the back seat so you're not mindlessly munching. Only eat when the car is stopped. A huge part of this one, just this whole issue, can be mindset, right? We covered a fair bit of that in the previous segment, so I'm going to be really concrete and straightforward with this one. I generally avoid specific food advice because I believe everyone can and should lose their weight eating foods they enjoy. And that's different for everybody. But I'll use examples from my experience to try and be a little more specific than usual. So, 0 calorie beverages. Save as many calories as you can. Throwing them away on bottomless pop refills is a super bad idea, but a really good way to get your calories completely out of control in a hurry. Water. Restaurants use a lot of salt, pretty much universally. Your body's going to need the water. Watch out for salads. I mean, yeah, they're great, but they can be loaded with calories. If it has cheese and a creamy dressing, you're likely in the same caloric ballpark as a burger. You don't need fries all the time. If you can, swap them out for some veg. Broth-based soups, relatively plain and not fried potatoes can be a fabulous choice. You can ask to have high calorie toppings on the side. And this applies to everything, not just potatoes, right? Mayo, butter, oils, all that stuff. Seniors menus, kids menus. There are a lot of different ways to come at this. High volume, low calorie foods are your friend. I am not an edamame person, but there are all kinds of things that you can munch on for just a few calories, right? Popcorn is probably more my speed. Air popped with butter flavored cooking spray, it's 40 calories a cup. Plus, it's whole grain, so it takes longer to digest, and that keeps you feeling fuller longer. Have a plan and don't treat it as a free for all to treat yourself. Okay, Question number 4 is a specific personal question, which can sometimes be a reason I don't answer right away. Not that I mind the specific personal questions, because I don't. I just tend to do the more general ones first. So, what did you eat for dinner in the beginning? I didn't answer this one because the answer is odd and it needs a lot of qualifying, right? I have to explain that my dinner was the first meal of the day because of my weirdo eating window, which makes my quote unquote dinner most people's breakfasts in some ways, but not in others. Then I have to explain the whole eating whatever I wanted part. Both of these are things that I've talked about a fair bit, but maybe we can do it in just a slightly different way today. I'm going to talk about how they work together, right? So, eating at night made me feel like I had more calories and it made it easier to pull off eating whatever I wanted. That was how I kept myself sane, and in a lot of ways, how I kept myself going. Dinner was my first meal of the day, but it literally could be anything because it doesn't matter what you eat so long as you're in a deficit. I usually ate dinner foods at dinner, and a huge part of it was that was my biggest meal, right? Even though I would eat again a few hours later. The second meal was more like a lunch when it came to calorie expenditure. I was always a night eater. That's why I leaned into it. I was giving myself what best suited my body, and more importantly, I was doing what I needed to do emotionally. I ate at night to comfort, reward, or cope. So I let myself have that so I could do the work I needed to do on my larger relationship with food. You've only got so much emotional bandwidth. You can only cope with so many things at once. So let's say I'd forced myself to only eat 3 small meals during the day, something that I did try, by the way, and no eating at all at night. No more of my most favorite thing. So now all I can think about is the stuff I'm not dealing with food. I'm not letting myself do any emotional eating, so I've got no bandwidth left to do any of the other work, the relationship with food work. I'm too busy thinking about not letting myself emotional eat that I don't have the time, the energy, or the focus to think about why I'm emotional eating. Instead, I did my emotional eating in a calorie deficit, right? I did the work and I learned how to get it under control. While I did that, my dinners consisted of pretty much anything you can think of. The strangest part of all of this is the mental part, right? Most people go into their first meal of the day thinking about how many calories they'll have left for dinner. I went into my first meal of the day without having to think about that at all. I mean, yes, I have to control my calories the same as everybody else for the rest of my day. But where somebody who eats in the morning has 16 or more hours of eating and not eating to get through, right? When I start, I've only got 8 hours in front of me before I have a hard stop because I'm going to sleep. So it's a very different headspace. And it really works for me. But I know that's not the case for everybody or even most people. As I'm balancing more and more with my body and my health, I often find myself eating earlier in the day, sometimes as early as 11:30. When I do that and I find myself thinking about what I want to eat at 9 o'clock that night, I remind myself of everything else I've had to eat that day. That probably helps me the most. Inventorying my day's food just mentally. Now, if I was tracking, I could just open up my app and scroll through it, right? I don't track very much anymore, but I do have a rough idea when I stop to think about it. And that's enough most of the time to slow me down. So in the beginning, I ate whatever I wanted to eat so long as I was in a calorie deficit for dinner. I started making changes and swaps so that I could have more of the things that I wanted most. But it was a pretty gradual process. How do you properly calculate calories for a deficit and maintaining? I avoided this one because they are two very different answers, and I've answered the first one a few times. The easiest way to figure out your calories to get into a deficit is to hop onto an online TDEE calculator and establish your maintenance TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. To be in a deficit, you want to eat 500 calories less than your maintenance TDEE each day. Maintenance TDEEs are a little trickier. I went into this in a ton of detail last week in episode 73, 9 Ways to Maintain Your Weight Loss. But the reason it's trickier is that your TDEE may have shifted. It's likely not the same as someone else who's always lived at your goal weight, or the same as it was the last time you were living at that weight. So you might have to experiment a bit with this one. But it can be the same with finding your deficit, right? You may need to cut slightly more to see results. Honestly, though, the biggest issue there is always tracking accuracy, which can be an issue when you're maintaining too. If your maintenance TDEE is 1800 and you're gaining a pound and a half a month, it sounds like you need to drop by about 100 calories a day and see what happens when you give that a try. Question 6 is something you wish you knew that would have made weight loss quicker. So I did a whole episode on this right at the start of this series. Actually, I think I did about 3 of them. Our first episode in this series, number 68, was 9 things I wish I knew before I lost 201 pounds. Then I did my 9 favorite weight loss tips in episode 69. And episode 71 was 9 ways to make it easier to lose weight. So I would start there for tips, but I want to take this one on another way. I know quicker is always the goal. We all want this to go as fast as possible. But you need to be willing to accept the truth about what's possible, or you're just going to waste all of your time chasing quick fixes that don't work. It's a tortoise and the hare thing, right? And I know the moral of this story is that the hare lost the race due to overconfidence and playing the fuck around game, while the tortoise persisted and plodded along. I'm not saying that refusing to see yourself as the tortoise means that you're playing the fuck around game and suffering from overconfidence too, but it's possible. I know I did. I'd watch some infomercial or read about some brilliant new scheme to shed the pounds speedily, right? And I'd be convinced that yes, even though I ate mostly processed foods and pretty much hated to move my body unnecessarily, I definitely could thigh master my way out of this, right? Or dexatrim my way down 100 plus pounds. Overconfident. And the fuck around game was me doing it again and again with different products and different harebrained schemes. Oh, you see what I did there though? You know me and puns. But it's harebrained like rabbits, not harebrained like the stuff that grows around your brain. And I kind of feel like that just reinforces my point here. Be like the tortoise. But I started by saying that you need to embrace the possible, which means you need to be realistic about how quickly you actually can lose weight. Don't chase faster, chase sustainable. Now, that brings us to our good for you, Gladys, question of the week. Okay, this is not a GFY that's been on the list for a while, but in our last Ask Whatever, I talked about gratitude. And while I was writing that segment, actually while I was writing it, a super charming Gladys popped up on my notifications on my screen. And she has graciously afforded me the opportunity to talk about something closely related to gratitude. So I thought, why not go into this one while it's still fresh in my mind? Here's what happened. It was a Saturday, and I had just found out earlier that week that my podcast, this podcast, is in the top 2.5% of all podcasts. And that's kind of a big deal. So I was sharing that with my Insta Flamingos, and everybody was so supportive and encouraging. And I'd been very, very nervous to share that. I don't like being boastful. It feels kind of gross. Social media is filled with people bragging about all kinds of numbers and statistics and stuff. And is really not my jam. I've got people on my team who I know really, really wish that wasn't the case, but I just don't feel comfortable sharing certain stuff all the time. While I was setting up the webinar, there was this whole big thing about testimonials. I don't want to do them. I didn't want to do them. But the women and men now, because the program's available online, so it's open to everybody. But the people who have trusted me and chosen to work with me don't deserve to be used as advertisements. They came to me for help, not so they could have their stories and their pictures and their lives splashed all over my social media. So that whole segment in the webinar was a bit of a thing. But the argument that persuaded me to go through with it, or got me to see the light finally, depending on your perspective. And the only way that I would do it was if it was words only with all identifiers removed. But it was explained to me that it might help you if I'm more transparent about things and more sharing and forthcoming with things. Someone may have also gone through a couple years of my social media and called it for all the testimonials my clients have made publicly already. And their argument was that if someone wrote this on a post of someone, me, with a couple 100,000 followers, they clearly don't have an issue with strangers on the internet seeing it. And I guess I can kind of see that point. Which brings us back to today's Good For You, Gladys. It's a public page, Glads. You brought this on yourself. So it's Saturday, and I'm getting all these lovely messages from you guys congratulating me on my big news, which it's really your news too, because you're the ones who are listening. But it was the first week of school, and I was trying to get into a new routine. Back to the gym, not for weight loss. I don't need to lose weight. I'm good. But I'm still dealing with fallout from the atrophy, and it's a whole big thing that I'll go into at some point over here. So I'm basically doing my physio at the gym. They've got probably about 30 of those controlled motion machines where you can set the resistance, like the weight on them. Well, I really like them because they only move one way, which just drastically lowers my chances of hurting myself. I am very clumsy and uncoordinated, and that did not change no matter how much weight I lost. Okay, it's going to be way easier to tell this story if I do a bullet point thing first for anybody who's new. When I got sick, I had to relearn how to walk, also how to sit and how to roll over. Okay. It was a whole long climb back, years. I developed left piriformis syndrome, which is the muscle that runs from your butt to just above your knee. You can see on MRIs that my left one is smaller than my right one, but I'm still very much a fat, thin person. I don't have a lot of muscle on my frame. So I was building muscle and I was doing really well. I was going to the gym and doing those machines I was telling you about. I was walking 5K a day. And I'd been able to do that for about 8 months when I got sick in 2022. Pancreatic pseudocyst. I was hospitalized and then on bed rest. And all that progress I'd made went up in smoke. But after what I'd been through in 2016, I knew that the best choice I could make mentally was to be grateful that I'd spent those 8 months in the gym. It wasn't a waste. I mean, yes, I was going to have to start over. But if I hadn't done it, I'd be so much worse off. Probably not as bad, obviously, surely not as bad as 2016. But I don't know how badly it would have spiraled. So as soon as I could, I got my ass back in the gym and I started again, reminding myself all the time how grateful I was, how it wasn't a waste, because what if I got sick again? And then I did. My kidneys wanted to turn in 2023. 2 surgeries, more hospital time, more bed rest, and all the progress I'd made went up in smoke. But this time, I really knew that I had to choose to be grateful. None of that was a waste, right? Even though I had to start over. So, once again, I am starting over, and that Saturday was day 4 at the gym. Neither time that I did this before did I ever go to the gym on a Saturday, but I'm trying to build this habit as quickly as I can. And I missed Monday because of the holiday and Wednesday because I just didn't do it. So I made myself go, and I'd made videos about it for my Instagram. On Friday, I'd said that I wanted to try and go on Saturday, and you guys reached out and you encouraged the fuck out of me, and it was amazing. Thank you. So at 12:45 on Saturday afternoon, I got in my van and I headed to the gym. I made my little video in my car like I'd done my 3 previous trips. And then I did my little workout. I made the second half of the video and I went home. Cool. I posted the video about the podcast. And then a few hours later, I posted the one about the gym because everybody was so nice. And I wanted to let you know that you guys really helped me to get there. Cool. And pretty near everybody had been awesome. And there I was writing that segment on gratitude from, I think it was episode 70. And up pops Gladys. Just fucking do it. Super cute. Okay. I like to swear too, but it's all about context. Now, it's entirely possible that she only saw the first bit of my video there where I was talking about not really wanting to go to the gym on a Saturday, and she found that frustrating. I'm not sure. And my feelings really aren't hurt here. I wouldn't even be telling you about this if it weren't for the next thing that I'm going to tell you, because it's not a noteworthy Gladys comment. I get stuff like that all the time. But then it's not noteworthy until you factor in her profile page. I'm a person too. If you're going to shit talk me on social media, odds are pretty good I'm going to sneak a cheeky peek at your profile page. Gladys's page was very simple. Just her name and 2 words. Kindness matters. I nearly fell over. I am so delighted by this. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe this was happening. So I stopped what I was doing, which was writing a segment for an episode from like 4 weeks ago, so that I could come over here to tell you about this now while it's still fresh. And I'm just still so tickled by this whole thing. I could very easily get distracted by a Gladys who comes, she just comes knocking in like 20 minutes or tomorrow afternoon or whenever. This is just too good. I mean, really? How amazing is that? Kindness matters. Gladys is a troll. It's marvelous. And maybe it's deliberate on her part. And if so, I almost think it's genius, because she knows if she trolls hard enough, people will do what I did, right? And go look at her profile and see the kindness matters shit and then get all triggered, and the battle that she thrives on will ensue. Part of me really wanted to call her out on this one in the comments. It really, really did. But one, that would be irresponsible of me to do. It's also not the kind thing to do, right? I love that think. Have you guys heard the think thing, where you're supposed to ask yourself before you say something if what you're about to say is true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind? So I just commented back, thanks. And then I liked her comment just on the off chance that she was using tough love. Because I could have pointed out the conflict of interest between her profile page and her comment, and it would have been true, right? I would have been telling the truth, but I'm not sure it meets the rest of that criteria. And I do try to be careful, because I want to inspire kindness in others, not turn my flamingos against anybody. But she is right. Gladys has the right of it. Kindness does matter. I mean, that's why we miss Richard so much. But it's easy to do. It's easy to not comment. It's easy to hold doors or compliment somebody on their shoes. It's the little things, the little choices. It's the way you choose to move through the world. It was important for me to write this one while the gratitude segment was fresh in my mind, because kindness is a kind of gratitude practice. One of my greatest joys and the things I'm the most proud of is that I've gone from being the person who struggles to be actively grateful. And I don't mean manners. I think I've always been fairly well-mannered. I mean, being the type of person who focuses on being grateful for the things and the people and the experiences in their life. And then I was someone who was so thankful to not be dead that everything seemed almost magical. Every single thing was something to be grateful for. Everything. And now I get to be somebody other people are grateful for, in little ways, like the I love your shoes thing, to bigger things like this podcast and the way I'm helping you to change your lives. And I feel like a total asshole for saying that, but I'm so grateful for it. And I'm not ashamed of the fact that when I was sick, when I was clawing my way back, I swore I was going to find a way to make my second chance worth something. I was going to find a way to help other people. And that's what I'm chasing every single day. Kindness is a huge part of that. The little kindnesses, like the way I answer all of your questions myself. I know it might take me a minute to get there, but I still do it all myself. Everybody keeps telling me that I should be using bots or AI, but I can't do that. I try to be kind with the bigger stuff too. You keep telling me that you like my no BS approach and that I'm direct and honest. But I kind of feel like all of those things are being kind. It isn't really kind to just tell people what they want to hear or give them the easy answer. That's not kindness. It isn't kind to beat around the bush and distract you from what's actually going on when it comes to losing weight. It's not helpful either. And if it's not helpful, it's not actually kind. So thank you, Gladys, for your reminder to be kind. I'm grateful for you too. Question 8 today is very specific, super duper specific, which is probably why it's on today's list and I didn't deal with it months and months and months ago. TDEE calculator accuracy, body fat percentage entry changes it dramatically. Yes, that is true. Ignore it. It's optional on most calculators anyway, if they even include it as an option. So don't worry about that point. And yes, Gladys, I do know that it makes a difference. I also know that the online tools to try and calculate your own body fat percentage, which isn't the same thing as your BMI, are completely inaccurate. You need special tools. You can't figure it out on your own. So just leave that part blank. TDEE calculators aren't 100%. That's not possible. They can only factor in so many variables, and there are a lot of variables. If you've got two people who are the same weight, height, age, all that stuff, and one of them used to weigh 100 pounds more than the one who used to be heavy is going to need fewer calories to maintain the same weight as the person who's always been that size. Last week when I was talking about maintenance mode, I said you'll probably need to play with it before you figure out your true TDEE. It's still true this week, and it applies to weight loss too. But to stay on topic, because y'all know I'm so good at that, don't worry if you don't know your body fat percentage. You don't have to know it to get where you're going. Stick with just the standard calculation to start with. I never once had to factor in my body fat percentage when I was losing weight. Either time. It did not happen. Our last question today is one that I get all the time, but I haven't technically answered it over here in a while. So what did you do? I ate whatever I wanted, but only at night. That's the short answer. The long answer takes me 53 weeks and over 800 workbook pages to walk people through. I ate all the foods I loved, but I got into a calorie deficit and I stayed there for just shy of 2.5 years. And I only ate after 6 p.m. People hate this answer because it's too narrow and it's too broad at the same time. It also doesn't make a lot of sense. Some people hate it because at least part of it is what they want to believe. So it sounds like it's too good to be true. Some people hate it just because it doesn't sound punitive. While I was losing weight, I was deliberately flip about answering this question. I liked shocking people. I was also sick of being judged and dismissed when I tried to explain it to people another way. I didn't mind pissing people off with this one. Things were different then. I know it's really hard to have weight problems now. I know the stigma is still there and the discrimination. It's not like it was in the first decade of this century, though. The prevalence of severe obesity more than doubled between the first time I lost weight and the second time, and it was a completely different landscape. When I was fat the first time, it was hard to find clothes that fit me in Canada, even at Walmart. There was nothing going on at all with the body positivity movement. It didn't even exist. The celebrities were being eaten alive by not only the tabloids, but also the mainstream media. Women who were maybe a size 8 being called horrible things and being harangued for their weight. There was palpable fat bias. Fat women, and some fat men for that matter, were openly ridiculed and sometimes totally degraded in movies and on TV. Diets were punitive. Fat people were supposed to suffer. They got fat, so it shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't be comfortable. You should be suffering. So when somebody who didn't really give a shit wanted to know how I was looking so much better or what I was doing to finally deal with my weight, and I said that I was eating whatever I wanted, it was maybe my first good for you, Gladys. I mean, it wasn't easy to lose my weight. I don't think there is an easy way to do it. It was hard. And I did have moments where I felt like I was suffering and possibly being punished. But nothing I did was punitive by design. And there's a big difference. So what I did was take the weight off in a way that made sense to me. I found an eating window that made me feel the most satisfied, and I stuck with it because that schedule cut out a lot of unnecessary eating. It made it easier to get into a calorie deficit. So did eating whatever I wanted. I tried it their way. I tried to eat the shiny, healthy foods and be good and cut out the sweets and the chips. I tried to stay away from restaurants and fast food. I tried to eat the same thing over and over. I tried the shakes. It didn't work for me. Their way made me feel worse. It made me feel desperate. None of it was sustainable. My way was offensive to a lot of people. It still is in some circles. Some people can see what I'm doing, that I'm trying to help reach the people that the other way doesn't work for, right? I get that some people are ready to switch to fully unprocessed foods, and some are willing to cut things like carbs or only eat every other day of the week. But that's not everybody, and everybody deserves to be met where they are. That's why I'm doing this. It's why I created things like my free guide to getting started for the last time. It's why I did the webinar and wrote the weight loss workbook. It's why I spent so many years developing the program. And I'm very grateful to each and every one of you who has supported me and what I'm trying to do. I know that with my follower count and the popularity of the podcast, there's an assumption that this is how I make my income. But the truth is that I have turned down every brand deal I've been offered, and I still won't let them turn the ads on because I'm afraid of the kind of ads that you're going to be exposed to. And I won't take the brand deals, the ones that I'm offered. I mean, it's just, I don't believe in the products, or I don't believe they're appropriate or relevant. Like, sure, I'd love some free closet organizers and the cash that you're offering me, but there's a 0% chance that's ever going to apply to what I'm talking about here. Zero. And I mean, yes, I do talk about closet eating. I've got a whole episode on it. It's number 13. But when we're talking about it in the literal sense, because I do have clients who eat in their physical actual closets, right? And they weren't just closet eaters in the more abstract sense that, it's something that you're hiding from people. When you're eating in a closet, the last thing I think you need is some sort of an organizational system to facilitate it. So that deal's a no right off the hop. I've been working to build my YouTube channel, and I would love for you to check it out. While you're there, please subscribe. I know it seems silly and everybody says that, but it really does help. Monetizing a YouTube channel is very hard, and I'm not sure why more people aren't open about the actual process instead of just saying, be sure to like and subscribe. Because I think if people knew what was actually involved, they'd be more inclined to help out. So here is the super transparent truth. I think I'm allowed to say this. I don't know why I wouldn't be. I need a minimum of 1,000 subscribers plus 4,000 hours of watch time, which has got to be done in a 365-day period. I have to do both of those things before I can monetize my channel. That's why everybody says like and subscribe. They ask you to like their videos because it tells the algorithms that the video is worth showing to other people. And they ask you to comment because the more people who engage with their content, the more people will be shown their content and the happier the algorithms will be. I hate asking. This is painful for me. But if I want to keep doing this, I need to get better at asking for help and support. So here we are. It's an Ask Whatever episode, and usually you're the ones doing the asking, but I guess it's my turn today. So thank you for bearing with me. Until I see you next time, keep trying, keep tracking, don't be intimidated, and don't give up. You've totally got this. Thank you for listening to Disrupting Obesity with Charlotte Skanes. If you know it's time to take back control, lose the weight, and keep it off, reach out to me privately with a direct message on Instagram that says ready, so you can start disrupting obesity.